how did you gain access to these mentorships and these sponsorships that helped you along the way?
I have a very interesting and funny story about this. So early in my career at Lockheed Martin, I was placed in a mentoring program. And
Mhm.
so when they talked to me about the matching, they matched me with a Black woman. And I said, oh no, I don't want a Black woman. I want a white man. And they said, excuse me? And I said, I have access to Black women like all day long. I don't lack for access to
Uh-huh.
strong and powerful Black women who are more than willing to pour into me and to tell me what they think. But I really haven't had exposure to white males. And I think in order to grow, it would be really helpful if you could pair me with a white man. And
Mm.
it really threw them off their loop because their thought about mentoring at
Uh-huh.
the time wasn't mature enough to see that mentoring should really add to something that you don't have. It's not
Right.
just about what fits you, but what do you need to add and stretch and grow. So they actually did assign me to a white male, and we had the best relationship. And he always said it was reverse mentoring because
Mhm.
there was a lot that he got from me. But what I learned from him was actually to be more assertive,
Mhm.
never go into a room without taking a seat at the table,
Mm.
don't go in and sit at the back to be gentle, and that I needed to articulate a point of view early on and just really to be more assertive. And
Mhm.
that was really important for me because culturally, that's not how I grew up. I grew up in the church, have a very strong, Christian faith and background that is more polite, and respect looks very different than the way he was giving me coaching, as well as just I was raised in the South. And
Mhm.
so just that Southern gentility and the grace
Mhm.
wouldn't naturally have me going in, taking my prominent seat at the table and
Right.
speaking up with my point of view, not quite the Southern charm I was raised with. So it was very instructive to me. And then I had another white male who I replaced in a role. And what he would do, we would go into the room and he would say, people would ask a question and they would say, Ken, what are your thoughts? And he said, Melonie's going to talk. And what he did, I never forgot it. And I try to do it for others always. He actually lended me his credibility. It would have
Mhm.
taken me a long time to like build that credibility. And certainly, sure, I could have done that. But look at the time gap. But because he said, Melonie will answer, and he never took it, he always gave it to me because he endorsed me. I was able to get that endorsement for others. And I think it's something that if we're not intentional about, we can miss it in the workplace. And that is something that actually can help overcome even unconscious bias that others have and
Mhm.
labels that people just unintentionally put based on stereotypes. So, really helping people overcome that becomes important.
You mentioned that, especially in your experiences of earning or being invited to the table, but you didn't always necessarily feel welcomed at the table. How did you get
Yeah.
past that challenge? And how did you allow it to not stop you from taking up space and owning your space in those moments?
So to quote Maxine Waters, reclaiming my time. So, that has become like a mantra for me. I loved when Maxine Waters said, I am reclaiming my time.
Mhm.
And as I grew older and more seasoned, I actually had to reclaim my time because when I sat at that table and I was invited to the table, but I knew I wasn't welcome because I wasn't participating in the activities that happened over the weekend that I wasn't invited to.
Mhm.
So there were things that were happening that I couldn't participate in because I didn't have those same shared experiences. And I actually was reluctant because I didn't know, well, what are the right experiences that I should talk about, that we could all unify around. But one of the things that I found at the table that we don't talk about enough is that I would give an idea,
Mhm.
somebody would take that idea and they would repackage it.
Mhm.
And my younger self would let it go but be disappointed. In my reclaimed time self, I actually address it and I'll say, wow, I'm so glad you were able to repackage that for me in
Mhm.
a way that we could all benefit. So thank you for restating that.
Mhm.
And so it's a gentle way to kind of bring it back, but to put ownership where it lies. And the other way it shows up at the table is that I will say something and then someone will say, well, as Melonie said, I agree and I've been thinking about, when in truth they weren't. It's another form to take your idea, to package it and to own it. And so I have, just much more confident and courageous about reclaiming those things, which really equals my personal power. And so if someone is taking my time, my words, and I got to expend my energy to reclaim it, I'm really reclaiming my personal power. And I think that's really important. And so what would I tell my daughter? What would I tell my twin sons? Is really to have courage of voice and not to let those things go, because it takes something away from you. If it doesn't do anything else for anybody at the table, it does something for you when you take ownership of your ideas.
So I have a question for you in thinking about if Melonie Parker had a magic wand, had no constraints, what would you do to increase kind of representation, like what we work so hard for in, diversity, equity, and inclusion? Like what would you do if you had the magic wand?
If I had the magic wand, it would really be parity. So I'm a huge fan of operationalizing diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I talk more about equity than I do about equality, because equity recognizes that not everybody starts at the same place. So we can't always get the results or the outcome that we need by providing, an equal application. Sometimes we need to customize or tailor that so that people who are below the average can come up. And so it would really be that true reflection of society that would exist in all of the corporations, all of the businesses, and we would have that true parity of outcomes across education, across business, across community, because without that, we fail. And it's really not like a single or even a collection of corporations. It's about the systems that underpin it. So it's who is getting access to computing in their classroom, in their community, and who is able to have the advantage to go off to college, to get the right education. Does everybody have access to that? And it goes to like our healthcare system. So we need to start working together as a collective, but this is where representation matters. And so if we had representation at parity across all of these structures, we would see a huge difference.
What can you share that are kind of common traits that you see in successful leaders who are aspiring to be maybe part of the C-suite someday? What are those success strategies?
The first one that comes to mind from a leadership standpoint is leadership as a position of humility. I mean, leadership done well is servanthood. It's servant leadership. So I'm a huge proponent of servant leadership, where we recognize as leaders that we exist to serve others, to lift others, to provide development opportunities, to make sure that we're uniquely customizing what's needed. This week I've been sitting down having career conversations about, like, what do you as the individual need? Where do you want to go? One team member, I said, you absolutely get kicked off my team. It's time for you to go fly somewhere else. And they're like, what? And I was like, yes, you need to grow differently. And so, that really is that position of humility and recognizing others as greater than yourself. And powerful leaders get that. And powerful leaders treat people as an asset rather than as an expense. And so they're looking at people around them as assets to be cared for, to be developed, to be treasured, not as an expense or expendable. And so that's number one. And then powerful leaders who really know how to set and cast a vision and then energize people to go towards that vision. Because often, if you think about the work that we both do in diversity, like can be a long uphill climb. Right. But what are those successes along the way? how are we championing people so that they continue to feel encouraged in the battle? And so being able to encourage, motivate, which comes with recognizing and rewarding. And at Google, we're doing a lot of work around belonging. Well, belonging is interesting because we all have this human fear that we're not going to be included. So we all want to belong, but we do that naturally by clinging to who's most like us. And so then we're othering. So they're the other because they're not like us. Well, really, we need to extend that definition of who's in our circle so that we don't have those in groups and out groups. And successful leaders, they recognize the in groups and the out groups, and they're pulling everybody in, and they're creating like a platform where everybody can see themselves and everybody feels welcome, like we talked about at the beginning. And so, but in order for people to belong, they need to feel seen, heard, supported, and valued.
How is the talent iterating? How are you as an employee iterating? So what are some of the things that you do to stay ahead of the curve so that you are constantly leveling up, or kind of, Melonie 2.0, 3.0, etc.?
Oh yeah, so I will tell you, when I first joined Google, I was so excited by all of the classes. I took a sewing class, I took a class on coaching, I took like a meditation class. I just was so excited by the personal and professional growth that I tried everything out. I took a cooking class at work. I took like how to use like basic knife skills. It took home like cut up potatoes. And they're like, what? And I was like, oh, no, I did this at work today. And but what it means is that enriching ourselves, not just professionally, but personally. Because who comes into the workplace is we're bringing ourselves. Like the gift to Google is the gift of myself. And I need to be enriched, not just personally and professionally, but the total sum of that. And so, some of the things I do, I actually do knit. I do. So I dabble in crochet. And so those are some of the things I do. I walk. I have a dog that's 1 year old. And so I have the opportunity, because he needs it, to walk him like 3 times a day, take a longer walk in the morning. And then I try to deliberately spend time with family and with friends and like have those deeper level connections. Now I'm on the phone a lot, just because of COVID and being sheltered in place. And so that enriches just the total person of who I am and makes me a better person. I know it's different than what you thought.
What would you love to leave in terms of parting words to our listeners, in, just pearls of wisdom from Melonie?
The pearls of wisdom for me are really, to thine own self be true. You are enough. Lean into who you are and recognize what that is and how valuable you are to the rest of the world. We need you.